Picture this. It's July 20th, 1969, and roughly 600 million people all around the globe are glued to their screens watching Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin take humanity's very first steps on the moon. It's literally one of the most extensively documented, independently corroborated, and physically verifiable achievements of the 20th century. And yet, for over 50 years now, this incredibly persistent belief has survived. In fact, in some corners of the internet, it's actually grown. The idea that the entire thing was just a massive stage production. So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we are unpacking a seriously enduring mystery. Despite an absolute mountain of scientific and historical evidence, why does the Apollo moon landing hoax theory absolutely refuse to die?
To really understand where we are today, we have to travel back a bit to the environment that originally gave birth to this skepticism. Think about the mid-1970s for a second. The American public had just lived through the release of the Pentagon Papers, the agonizing Vietnam War, and of course, the Watergate scandal. Trust in official government narratives wasn't just low, it was completely at rock bottom. In fact, according to a 1976 Gallup poll, nearly 28% of Americans believed the moon landing had been faked. That was the absolute high watermark for the theory, and it perfectly proves a crucial point. The hoax narrative didn't start with bad science, it started with broken trust.
All right, here's our roadmap. We'll start with the birth of the conspiracy, pit those famous visual myths against actual scientific reality, look at the independent witnesses, unpack the psychology behind the belief, and wrap up with the future of the hoax.
Let's jump right into part 1, tracing the origins of the moon hoax.
So this whole conspiracy really gained its footing back in 1976. That's when a guy named Bill Kaysing self-published a book claiming America faked the landing simply because we lacked the technology. Now, interestingly enough, Kaysing wasn't exactly a rocket scientist. He was an English major who had worked as a technical writer. His fringe claims kind of just bounced around in the background for a couple of decades. But then came February 2001. The Fox network broadcast this massive hour-long special called Conspiracy Theory: Did We Land on the Moon? And wow, did this change things. It catapulted the hoax to tens of millions of viewers, parading out a cast of uncredentialed investigators while practically editing out all NASA's scientific rebuttals. It caused such an uproar that actual scientists had to spend years re-debunking these claims. But as we crossed into 2009, modern orbital confirmation began capturing high-res photos of the landing sites, which entirely changed the game again.
So, let's tackle Section 2, Myth versus Scientific Reality. We're going to put the most famous visual anomalies side by side with basic physics.
Okay, the granddaddy of all hoax claims, the missing stars. Proponents will tell you that because the sky is pitch black in the Apollo photos, they absolutely must have been shot on a dark soundstage. But the reality is so much simpler, and honestly, you can test this yourself. Just think about taking a picture with your smartphone outdoors on a super bright, sunny day. Your camera automatically uses a fast shutter speed, so the bright landscape doesn't get totally blown out, right? Well, the lunar surface was reflecting brilliant, unfiltered sunlight. The astronauts' camera exposures were calibrated for that intense, blinding brightness, which means the faint light of distant stars in the background, they simply couldn't register on the film.
Next up is the infamous waving flag. I mean, how could a flag flutter on a moon with zero wind and no atmosphere? Well, NASA obviously knew the flag would just hang there limply like a wet towel, so they actually designed an L-shaped rod to hold it out horizontally. The rippling effect you're seeing on the video, that was purely caused by the astronauts physically twisting the pole back and forth to dig it into the really compact lunar soil. And because the moon is in a vacuum, there is literally no air resistance to slow things down. So that residual motion from the astronauts wrestling the pole kept the flag wiggling back and forth way longer than it ever would down here on Earth.
And then we have the shadows. Some people claim that because shadows in the photos run in different non-parallel directions, NASA must have used a whole rig of multiple artificial studio lights. Actually, scratch that. It's not studio lights at all. It's just a trick of perspective. When you have a single distant light source, in this case the sun, casting shadows over uneven, cratered, undulating terrain, those shadows naturally appear to converge or diverge. It's an optical illusion. You can literally reproduce this exact same effect on any bumpy hill on Earth when the sun is sitting low on the horizon.
Finally, there's the big claim that the Apollo astronauts would have been absolutely fried by the Van Allen radiation belts that surround the Earth. The actual truth? NASA engineers knew all about those belts. They purposefully designed the spacecraft's trajectory to pass through them extremely rapidly, completely avoiding the most intense hazard zones. Plus, the spacecraft's aluminum hull and all the internal instruments provided excellent shielding. When all was said and done, the astronauts received a total radiation dose of about 2 rem. To put that into perspective, that's roughly equivalent to getting a few modern medical scans. It was well below the hazard threshold.
Moving right along to Section 3, the independent witnesses. Because what's truly fascinating here is that the most powerful rebuttals to the hoax don't even come from the United States.
Think about it. Faking the moon landing would require the absolute unbroken silence of about 400,000 Apollo workers. But even more than that, it would require the complicity of America's fiercest Cold War enemy. Back in 1969, the Soviet Union was actively tracking the Apollo missions with their own independent deep space network. They had literally every geopolitical incentive in the world to expose an American fraud. Yet they remained totally silent, completely accepting the landings a scientific fact. Fast forward to today, and we have high-resolution orbital imagery confirming all the hardware is still sitting right there. And it's not just NASA taking these pictures. India's space agency imaged the Apollo 11 descent stage in 2021. South Korea's orbiter photographed the sites in 2023. Japan has done the same thing. None of these independent international agencies have any incentive whatsoever to protect a 50-year-old American lie.
Furthermore, we actually have daily physical proof. During the Apollo 11, 14, and 15 missions, the astronauts left behind these highly specialized mirrors called retroreflectors. Every single day, observatories in the US, France, Germany, and elsewhere fire lasers directly at the moon. That laser hits the retroreflector and bounces the signal perfectly back to Earth, which lets scientists measure the exact Earth-Moon distance down to the millimeter. Guys, this is physical infrastructure sitting on the lunar surface. It absolutely, fundamentally cannot be faked from a Hollywood soundstage.
So, the million-dollar question. If the independent evidence from adversaries, allies, and daily physics is this overwhelming, why on earth do people still doubt it? That brings us to Section 4, the psychology of belief.
If we look at recent polling data, including a really rigorous academic survey from 2021, modern belief in the hoax hovers at a very stubborn 12%. But what's genuinely fascinating, and honestly a bit concerning for science communicators, is that this belief is showing a noticeable upward drift among millennials and Gen Z. You see, these younger cohorts didn't experience the live broadcast back in 1969. Because they lack that direct historical memory, it seems they're much more susceptible to algorithmically curated misinformation.
When you dig into peer-reviewed psychological research, it tells us something really important. Conspiracy theories aren't actually about a lack of evidence. They're about fulfilling deeply rooted psychological needs. It generally boils down to 3 things. First, epistemic motives. That's our natural human desire to make sense of huge, complex events and find some kind of certainty. Then you have existential motives, where believing that a secret, shadowy group is in control actually feels a lot safer than accepting that the world is just chaotic. And finally, social motives, the deep desire to feel special or to be part of an exclusive in-group that possesses hidden knowledge. When you mix all those psychological drivers with a generational distance from the actual historical event, boom, you get a perfect storm for a conspiracy theory to thrive.
And this leads us to a fascinating psychological mechanism called unfalsifiability. In a normal, healthy scientific process, if new evidence comes along, it might disprove your theory, right? You adapt. But with a conspiracy theory like this one, when brand new evidence arrives, like independent international imaging teams taking high-res pictures of the landing sites, the believer doesn't change their mind. Instead, they just expand the conspiracy. They simply decide that the imaging team in India or South Korea must suddenly be in on the hoax too. Any evidence against the theory is instantly reinterpreted as proof of just how impossibly vast the cover-up really is. It's a closed mental loop.
Let's move into our final section and look at how this historical skepticism builds directly into our present day, the future of the hoax.
You know, you might logically think that as our technology improves and our cameras get better, these myths would naturally just fade away, but they don't. The upcoming 2026 Artemis II crewed lunar flyby, it has already begun generating its very own fresh wave of hoax allegations online. Short-form video platforms and algorithmic feeds are unbelievably effective at taking 50-year-old, thoroughly debunked visual claims and injecting them right into your timeline, entirely stripped of the actual scientific context that resolves them. The conspiracy simply stretches and mutates to cover any new mission we launch.
As we navigate this incredibly noisy media ecosystem, it's vital to remember the voices of the actual experts. Take James Van Allen, the legendary physicist who discovered the radiation belts that hoax believers claim would have killed the astronauts. He personally wrote a letter shutting the whole thing down. He called that 2001 Fox special an ingenious and entertaining assemblage of nonsense. Think about that. You simply cannot use a scientist's own discovery to claim space travel is impossible,
when that very same scientist is standing there telling you it isn't.
And that leaves us with a critical, ongoing challenge. We have seen firsthand how easily a mixture of generational distance, deeply ingrained psychological motives, and algorithmic amplification can sustain a historical myth, literally regardless of how much physical proof exists. So as we prepare for humanity's next great leaps into the cosmos under the Artemis program, we have to ask ourselves, as these platforms continually revive 50-year-old myths, how are we going to defend the historical truth of tomorrow's lunar missions? Think about it. Thanks so much for watching this explainer. We'll see you next time.